Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Hayes, and in today's short rant, I want to talk about Russian Milbloggers based on some interesting reporting from ISW. And so this is about Russian Milbloggers, or Putin's choir preaches back, right? Normally you preach to the choir. Well, it sounds like the choir's preaching back at Putin. Okay, what are Russian Milbloggers? Why do we care about them? Well, they are bloggers on Russian social media, largely Telegram, that address military issues. And some of them have fairly large followings, some smaller. And ISW, the Institute for the Study of War, that is increasingly becoming the source as mainstream media, as the normal media is reporting less and less on what's going on in Ukraine. This becomes their daily briefings are really what's keeping me aware of what's going on. And they use these guys as a source of information. What are they talking about? And they use them as a source of understanding what the Russian side and what Russian claims are. And so they keep tabs on them. And these guys they're not all nationalists, but many of them are very nationalistic, very supportive of the war aims, even the war aims that are inflated, this denazification thing, right? These, like I say, this overall is the choir, right? They're supportive of the war. However, they have become increasingly critical of the handling of the war. And it appears that they are now very much at odds with the Kremlin. And the critical events in this, the river crossing, the Severodonetsk River, you may remember back in mid-May, the Ukrainians just wiped out a Russian battalion. I think it was, they're not really sure, but I think at least a whole battalion tactical group got wiped out in trying to cross the river. And as a result, you had a lot of discontent amongst military bloggers, a lot of criticism of how they were handling it. And this apparently led to a June 17 meeting with Putin, that Putin decided, hey, these guys are being a problem, let's win them over. That's apparently, we don't know, right? There was a June 17th meeting. This is what we know. And a lot of this is based on ISW reporting of one military blogger in particular, some guy named Rybar, and he talks about this event. And so this is kind of the new factoid that's come out. And apparently at this meeting, these guys told Putin, spoke truth to power. And they just said, no, this thing's a disaster. You don't understand. Because mixed in with the Milbloggers are war correspondents, people who are on the ground, right? So that's a group of people. I'm mainly focused on the Milbloggers here, but they are also involved in this. And we're involved in this meeting because and they say if the June 17th meeting was about getting these guys on board, not so much. And so there is now apparently, the reporting is that the Russian Defense Ministry has now identified that this group of people as a major threat, right, rather than a poorly managed one, right? And so those are their categories. The point, though, is that we now have an increasing conflict, and there's the looming prospect of, you can cut down on, they can start cracking down on them, but we got this tension here. So what are the implications? What do we do with this? Assuming that it's correct and all the caveats here. The interesting thing about this, to my mind, is the Milbloggers, they are pro-war. They are, in fact, in many ways, pro-propaganda. They have drunk the Kool-Aid, okay? They are on board. And very often they seem to have links to the military. They're ex-military, or they have friends in the military. And this is where, they think they get a lot of their info, right? So they are linked to the military as well. And so these are the people who, if they're critical of the war, they aren't the people who are protesting the war. These are not the guys throwing Molotov cocktails at the recruiting station or getting arrested or putting up signs on TV. They're on the other side of the spectrum, but they're critical of the handling of the war, and they're not getting they have more voice in their communities than, the folks who are protesting, right? They're getting shut down right off the bat. So the question I have, and I have had this throughout this conflict, as we watch the Russian military, incompetence exposed, what effect does that have on military officers, right? This is the thing I just keep seeing is when you have such a fiasco and you have such high casualties amongst not just your soldiers, but this really weird, these generals are getting whacked, right? And you're getting pressure from the top. I just keep saying, if you're a Russian major, colonel, if you're even a lower ranking general, what are you thinking about all this, right? And are you happy? You can't be happy about this. You must feel betrayed. And so my question is there this seed of discontent? I imagine there is. And in history, we have had things that are often called colonels' coups or colonels' revolts, where the kind of the the upper middle management of the military organizes, you get a cabal of officers and they take over, right? Or they mutiny, right? And so we can talk about Nasser. He did that in Egypt. Gaddafi in Libya did it. But also in other places, with the French military mutinied in Algeria over what they perceived as the mishandling of the war and a bunch of issues. And that actually brought down the French government and brought Charles de Gaulle in with the current Fifth Republic. I think we're on the Fifth Republic in France right now. It brought down a republic, though. They changed the Constitution. So, this can happen. Is this wishful thinking? We have to be careful of that. However, is there a seed of discontent? If there is, then, we got to say, all right, these guys might be voicing it. If you crack down on them, if you crack down on the guys who talk a lot and who communicate a lot, what does that do to the seed of discontent? It might quell it, it might silence it, or it might not, right? It might fan the flames. And I also go, in this line of thinking, I keep coming back. When we talk about Kool-Aid drinking, right? Okay, I long ago drank the selectorate theory Kool-Aid, and it comes up a lot because it's important and it's our understanding of this. But one of the things that when I look at the Russian regime as it is, Putin's got his cronies. He's got, all these folks in there that are being kleptocrats that have found their way to the top. And generally, though, one of the things that selectorate theory says is, hey, an important part of maintaining an authoritarian regime is that there be a large selectorate, that there be a large group of people who feel that someday they could be part of the inner circle. And one of the things about the Marxist-Leninist system is that selectorate was the Communist Party. And so if you're in China and you want a path to power, and maybe you aren't going to make it in the private sector as much, but you join the party and you are faithful and you move up, and so you're one of the in guys, right? In Russia, they don't necessarily have this. Well, they don't have this anymore, and so how do you join Putin's club, right? You can't pledge the fraternity. That I'm aware of. Now, Putin has been expanding his reach, but it's still cronyism, right? And the guys who are in power are Putin's buddies from St. Petersburg, by and large, and from his days in St. Petersburg. And so, how does the junior officers in the Russian military, how do they view the world? How do they see, the kleptocracy and all that? And, do they feel like they're part of the system? Or are they going to, as part of the seed of discontent, or as part of the discontent that's growing, going to morph into, hey, we're never going to be part of this aristocracy, right? Because it has been described as a new aristocracy blooming in Russia. And how do we be, and certainly, the Peter the Great references put you in that way, thinking that way. that are made about Putin, right? But this is the question, right? Without that selectorate, without that entryway, I'm always like, hey, these guys have got to look at the future and say, if we want to get ahead, we have to take over ourselves. So there's that seed, that other seed of political discontent, and it's something that I just have been wondering. I've been saying, yeah, this is something that I just worry. I grew up in the military, and there was the lingering discontent over how Vietnam was run that manifested in in the never again attitude, and a lot of legislation and a lot of efforts to change the American military. Now that was a different channel, right? And in fact, the Vietnam War was not as egregiously mismanaged as this perhaps, but there was a feeling when you came out. By the way, there was a feeling amongst American officers when they came out of Vietnam that the Army was woefully ill prepared to take on the Soviet Union. We've been focusing on counterinsurgency and all this other stuff, and they've been building tanks. And so we need tanks. We need the M1, the Bradley. These are the things that, along with air-land battle doctrine, all these things were the reaction. The reaction in an authoritarian regime might be to take over, right? So this is what I'm watching. This is what I'm wondering. And so this conflict with the Milbloggers is a lot of noise, right? And it's a lot of thunder and smoke. Is there fire? Is there lightning somewhere? I don't know. But it's something to keep an eye on. And thank you for the folks at ISW for keeping us aware of what's going on, at least because we're just not getting it in the press nowadays.
Thank you for listening to my short rant. I'm Dr. Dave Hayes, and though I teach at Troy University, this video is my own work. Troy University has neither approved nor reviewed the content, so there. And if you want to follow me on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, please feel free. And if you're wondering who would employ a guy like this, or maybe you'd love to be a student, it's not an ad, but I would love to have more students. Feel free to check us out at www.troy.edu. And we're going to end up finishing off listening to Tonight at 8 by Shane Ivers.